Got a lot of people. A lot of people. Hi. See if I can get everyone's attention. These mics are on, I guess. That's good. Let me just really quickly, thank you for joining us. Let me just introduce the panel real quick. We're going to start at the far end. Allison Stern, who's CMO and co-founder of Tubular Labs. To her right is David Wang, who's SVP Digital Product Management or Development, at Nielsen. To his right is Eric Korsch, who's president of Mashable Studios. To his right is Peter Gorenstein, who's Chief Content Officer of Cheddar TV. And to his right, Borja Perez, who's SVP Digital and Social Media at NBC Universal Telemundo Enterprises, wins for longest title on the panel by a wide margin. The topic we're talking about today, obviously, is models for live video and how you all are going to make money in live video, because it's a lot of fun to create live video, but it's a lot more fun to make money when you make live video. But I thought maybe as a great way to start, we've got about 30 minutes for this panel. I thought it would be great, since we have a bunch of people who are creating and analyzing live video across multiple platforms, what is working? Like, when you look at live video right now, what are the obvious things or ways that live video, from a content standpoint, what is working that you really see? Whoever wants to start. Allison, you analyze a ton of data. What are you seeing on the data side?
Yeah, so Tubular is a video intelligence platform. We analyze 2 billion videos, including Facebook Live. So I kind of channel all that data through me to give you a few insights from it. One thing that's really interesting is that Facebook Live is extremely engaging. So we actually see Facebook Live videos are twice as engaging as regular Facebook videos. And I think as
What's the definition of engaging when you say that?
Likes, comments, shares, any sort of social action taken on the videos. And so I think as we start to monetize video, people often use engagement as a proxy for that. If people are engaging, then they're more likely to buy products. It's more successful for brand and entertainment. And Facebook Live, we are seeing that. Also, interestingly, the Chewbacca mom is the #1 Facebook Live video of all time, about 125 million views. Also seeing news, music, celebrities really popular in Facebook Live right now.
Well, we have 2 news organizations, effectively, or 2 news services that shoot lots of video. Maybe from a Cheddar and Mashable standpoint, what are you seeing on the live video side that works? And do you notice when you do different things what works or doesn't work so well?
I'll jump in. So it's still, for us, very, very nascent learning phases. The 2 things that Allison mentioned, the pop for us news, climbing the Trump Tower, celebrities, John Hamm in The Office, those things do well. Occasionally we have some hits with something that might have some anticipation built in, a la the BuzzFeed watermelon, whether it's a stunt or something more factual. Those things are doing well, but in general it's super experimental, so we're sort of really light on the data side for now.
Peter?
For us, so we Facebook Live has been our main platform since the beginning, and we're on Periscope as well, and we'll soon be on Twitter. So Facebook Live so far has been our main focus and metrics that we get. We are primarily news focused, but anytime you add celebrity to that, that's interesting. We take it in a much more granular focus, like in terms of what topics do well. Politics in a way does well for us, like we had Gary Johnson on this morning and talking about the libertarian cause, that does well. Gaming does really well for us. Weed topics do really well for us. Products and just regulation, that has done amazingly well for us. On top of our main focus, which is technology.
I didn't know we were going to get hot into this conversation. So
it does well.
But, whatever from an NBC Universal Telemundo standpoint.
For us, we've been experimenting probably for the last 4 years. As soon as the new platform arrives, I remember back when it was the Meerkats, the Periscopes. We were doing a lot of red carpet coverage during billboards, Latin billboards, or the Latin AMAs. Now we have evolved more into the Facebook Live strategy, and the reason why we are doing it is, and is going to the topic, is we try to bundle these products with other digital products in order to monetize. Because as a standalone, it's still difficult. The KPIs are not there. So we try to bundle that with other things. But for us, the way we are seeing it is more like, now we have the technology, we had to create like a real programming strategy, making sure that it makes sense. We are not gonna do a novella live because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But probably our news organization needs to create an entire programming strategy to see how we are gonna be bringing those news to the Hispanic consumer. That, by the way, the Hispanic consumer, it happens to be in the general market, so it's a very demanding consumer that is expecting us to be there.
And when you think about people tuning into live content, Allison made a comment that it was twice as engaging as on-demand content, but yet we live in this world where increasingly we think about, we live in a Netflix world where you watch content whenever you feel like it. You don't actually tune in to watch Modern Family live on Wednesday nights. You tune in whenever you want to watch Modern Family. How do you look at we're in an on-demand world, but yet everyone on this panel and this whole event is about live? Am I missing something?
Well, from our point of view, we have we are moving to 8 hours of live programming every day, starting in the very near future. And so, as we do that, and as we want to get on as many OTT platforms as possible, we look for big interviews or big moments for a jump. But we're also okay being the new ambient background screen that you have in your office or in your home if you want to have news on and just be in the background and not being your main focus. We're fine with that.
You're okay being kind of a radio-like experience?
Yeah. I think it's something that's lacking, actually.
How do you think it's lacking if I can leave CNN on in my office all day?
Well, in terms of our topic category, I think. And it's also, our approach is different. Our colors are light blue and pink, and our whole approach from an aesthetic standpoint is a little bit different, and we want it to be kind of a better, more visual wallpaper.
I mean, to jump in here a little bit, I know the original question you had was around what about this on-demand world, how's it balance out? And it's interesting because, so at Nielsen, we've been rolling out new measurement systems this year and actually in the last little while to focus on measuring all the on-demand.
Some new stuff yesterday.
All the new stuff yesterday, yeah.
Just to be timely.
Yeah, to be very timely. Out-of-home measurement, things like that. And, it's funny because a lot of times people think, okay, live video is dying, but in reality, what you're actually seeing is that you're seeing the video and the content which is actually most relevant to be measured or to be distributed on live. And what we're seeing is not actually that surprising, which is that it's sports and that it's serial dramas and it's any type of content which actually requires that it makes sense to be able to watch live. And that you're seeing things like Modern Family sitcoms and cartoons and things like that falling into on-demand. So really, I think what we're seeing, at least within the Nielsen kind of view of the world and the measurement that we're doing, is that there's live is being highlighted as the best way to distribute some forms of content. Some is surviving best, and that on-demand ends up being, again, a good distribution tool for the right type of content.
One reality about live today, though, is it really is on demand as well. So take Chewbacca Mom, which has 150 million views.
I did not see it live.
Right. So on day one, it had 25 million views, which is still very good. But the massive majority of views came after the fact. So I think one thing powerful about live is you run it live, and then it's there as content on demand after the fact as well. And I think that in terms of content
But do you think it mattered that it was live at all? Like if it was never live and it had just gone up and it was a funny video and it caught fire, does it matter that it's live, I guess, is a kind of a fundamental question.
Right. So I think, it splits into two parts. One is events that are currently viewed live, which will now migrate onto social platforms. So take, for example, the debate. A lot of people, the only way they engaged with the presidential debates was through Facebook Live or Twitter Live or any of these live platforms. And so things that people are used to watching live, Olympics, sports, reality TV, debates, all of that, I think will start to move online. But then you have a second category of content, which is, sort of creating tent poles. Like BuzzFeed has done a lot of work around food art. So a lot of videos around making a huge mural out of Skittles or chocolate, or watching a cookie bake. And so all of these things that nobody watched live before are now becoming live, and that's an interesting dynamic too. So you have to try to generate demand for people to come and watch.
And when you think about the whole concept of how you measure this audience, because I think we can talk all about creating content, but if we're going to get to basically monetizing, we've got to talk about how do we measure what's actually happening. So you brought up the debates, Allison, but David, maybe you can talk for a second. I think about measurement, and I go, when the debate's going on or whether Monday Night Football is going on, it's the average number of viewers spread across the entire hour and a half or 3-hour event respectively that I'm talking about. When YouTube gets up and talks about how many people watch the debates, it's viewers with an unspecified length of time. And sometimes we're talking about Facebook where a viewer is someone who watches for a split second or two. Do we need to get some type of commonality across what's a view and what's engagement in order to monetize?
So that's a huge question that you've just asked, but I'll focus on a few things.
You have 2 minutes to
I know I have 2
nail
minutes.
it down.
So the first thing is that the good thing about live is that live viewing is actually inherently easier to measure because it's just an event that's happening. It has a very defined time frame. It happens like the debate. It starts at 9:30. It continues on until 11. You can measure everything that's happening within that time, as opposed to on demand, which could go on forever, right? You can keep on seeing views for months and months and months. A few thoughts. The first is that views are not a great measure for live. And that I'll just put that out there because views are inherently a on-demand type measure. It's did you go and request something and then did it come to you? Whereas live, you're talking about are you tuning into something which is happening live? And so you need to be able to understand how many people are watching, frankly, at every second and every minute of a piece of particular live content. In TV, the reason why people average across is because it's convenient. Because if you measure every minute and you average it, they actually, you take a look at it, it doesn't vary too much. People tune in and tune out, but it's on average about whatever million number of people. I think what we're seeing for digital is that there's a lot more fluctuation, and so that's demanding.
We're having a bad day.
Bad day.
They didn't like your answer. They like views.
They like views.
They like views. Gary Vaynerchuk loves views. There we go.
So if views are bad, what's the right way to measure it?
So not averaging audiences, but be able to show what the average minute audience or even the average instantaneous audience is ultimately where we need to go. Average minute audience is good because it's a meaningful amount of time. It actually captures the amount of time that people are engaged for a relevant period of time. And you can measure it as a particular piece of content goes through its live broadcast. So during the debates, I thought it was really great on Facebook Live because you can see the average audience, not the average audience, the actual audience.
You see the actual viewers at every second of the
every
debate.
single second. And
you see the rise and the fall.
It'd be crazy to be able to give every second of viewing, be able to say, okay, here's the research against this piece of content. That'd be often too much information. But if you were to average it out by minute and say, here's how many people you actually had, then it gives you something relevant to an advertiser, for example, to be able to say, how much engagement do I have in a given minute? How much attention could I potentially get in a given minute of the programming? And that's where when Nielsen is rolling out a lot of these new measurement services, we're focusing on this concept of comparable metrics. What is relevant when you compare for the utility of the data for either research or for monetization? What is most comparable? And average minute audience ends up being a pretty good number, especially when you're starting to think about live versus TV and versus other kind of monetized platforms.
Borja, you do both. You look at the TV world as well, or the linear TV world as well as the digital world. How do you react to that?
Well,
Does that work for you?
It's surprising because, like, for example, last couple of weeks ago when we were doing the Latin American Music Awards, we were able to, the way we measured, we have like 740,000 people enjoying the Facebook Live that we did together with E! And then obviously we were having, after we finished the red carpet coverage, we ended up reaching in 2 hours 1.2 million people. That's the KPI that we use today. That's kind of like what we used to go back to any partner and say, listen, this was the amount of views that you have during this period of time. But we try to combine that together with other digital measurement and of course the rating of the show. We are not just reporting one thing individually, and since right now we have that kind of like as a point of reference, when we will do now in November the iHeart Music Festival Latina, we will try to replicate the same thing, and we will see if that red carpet also reaches 1 million views or 1 million 2 views, and based on repetition, we will be able to set up some standards on performance.
Do the digital guys agree? Does it have to go beyond the view, or is a view okay?
I think goes beyond the view to the demo also. I mean, if we're competing against cable, let's say the cable CBC business audience is 60 and older, and if we look at our Facebook numbers, it's pretty much everyone's 35 and younger. So that's very important to us too.
I just think we're not yet, we're in a place where we're not providing really anything that new or fresh or different. Like, I don't know that we're really solving a consumer problem yet. Like, there's plenty of good live out there in other areas. So it's so early in our side. I feel like the big winner is Facebook looking at the data across what we are all doing. Any individual piece of content, like, we can't learn that much from it. But Facebook, that's why they're sort of funding that operation.
But one of the things that is also kind of interesting is the other day when we were planning to do this Facebook Live, I asked my team, I said, okay, how are you going to promote this? How you let that other audience know that we are going to have live coverage from the red carpet? Because if you have the anchor, you're right there, on TV saying, and now you can enjoy Facebook Live, that you are talking to a TV audience to let them know that they have another option. My point is how ahead of the time you start telling people, hey, and we are going to be doing this. You are reaching a completely different audience of the audience that they are watching TV, or the audience that they are doing the live stream on telemundo.com. So promotion of that content is key in order to create some sort of like volume that later on you can measure.
When Barstool Sports goes live, I get a little pop-up on my phone saying, El Presidente is live. So, I mean, I think notifications probably play a big role in that too, in terms of having some relationship with your viewer. Cheddar, I get the alerts on my Facebook feed that you're live. I mean, I think that becomes a very important part of the game, which I assume is not an easy thing to kind of ingrain in behavior.
Well, it has to, because if you use the platform, Facebook specifically, to just tell people about a tune-in tomorrow or a week later, you're going to kill your edge rank with basically messages that are not useful.
So you're saying if people don't actually tune in, so like if you push out messages, you don't actually get a view,
in a way,
it's going to actually penalize you in the future.
Yeah, unless
and so that's the big risk. And so you got to make sure that if you send out a message, that it's driving a quality tune-in that someone's actually going to hit the button on.
Yeah, it's not just about shouting from the rooftop. That'll actually have a negative impact.
And so when you think about monetization, I spend a lot of time thinking about the traditional TV ad world, and I look at how TV has moved online. Obviously, we've all had the TV everywhere experience of logging in with your Time Warner or Comcast password and getting kind of a long series of unskippable 30-second spots that are very repetitive. Like, as you all think about live video, and I realize that we're streaming here on a Facebook feed that isn't actually being monetized beyond sponsorship, but like, should there be, like, what should monetization look like? I mean, should it be 30-second spots the way we're all used to, or should there be something new and different? Whoever wants to go first. Allison smiling, you start.
It should definitely be new and different. I mean, I'm the analytics person on the panel, not the content person. But as a consumer myself, I think every time there's a new platform that develops, whether that was moving from newspapers to radios, or radios to TV, or TV to mobile, or whatever it is, there's always a new form of content that takes hold. And I think that you're doing a disservice to your viewers and to advertisers and to the ecosystem if you're not trying to figure out new ways to monetize. So we've seen a real rise in branded content, sponsored videos, whether that be shout outs on air, or whether that be using Facebook's kind of handshake tool to partner with a brand and sponsor something. But I think it's exciting to experiment and see what's going to work.
Peter, you have some Soylent for us?
Yeah, so what we've done, that sponsorship is over. We don't.
Sorry.
And we never eat the bars on camera too, because I know there's been a recall. But so what we've done is focused on making that ad a live experience. So it's an integration within the show with brands we think fit our editorials.
And can that scale?
Why not? I mean, as long as we have the inventory.
Can you scale it 8 hours? I mean, you said you're going to be 8 hours a day. Can you do 8 hours a day of sponsored content?
Well, it's not 8 hours
no,
a day.
But like, I mean, supported by sponsorship.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for now, I think that the struggle has been not enough inventory. So I'm pretty bullish on our ability to add
Eric,
more
what do you think?
sponsors in an organic way.
I mean, we believe in that same idea of doing the live integration. Doesn't feel that scalable yet to me.
Because my fear is when I was watching Mark Zuckerberg, I think it was before the second debate. He's sitting in his backyard. He's doing kind of a Facebook Live talk with his big green egg in the background, smoking meat and having his friends come over for a beer. And I'm just thinking, like, could you imagine if in the middle of, like, while he's talking, it goes pause, we'll be right back with, 3 minutes of messages from our sponsors, or 30-second ads. Like,
That's like the old Texaco, pan over and there's the people on stage making the ad live.
Well, no, forgetting the ad live. Like, what if it was just mid-roll? Like, does mid-roll work? Like, can you actually do mid-roll, or do you actually have to do an integration where it's a product he likes? Like,
depends on the content. I mean, because we're not talking about an environment that's any different from the NFL. I'm watching a game. It's sponsored by Toyota. The game has a pause. Will I stick with it or not?
But the game has pauses built in. The car chase that someone's filming on Facebook Live, or you mentioned Trump Tower. So would it have worked if you had cut to break and said, well, look, we're going to take 2 minutes of commercials to make money on the Trump thing? Would people have tuned into someone else's feed? I guess is the risk, right?
Yeah.
Is that
right.
How do you keep people engaged, to Allison's point, but also try to monetize?
So that's why I think we're not at monetization really yet. It's still a gimmick for us. In any case, yes, we can add this element. Nobody's coming just purely for Facebook Live. So I think we're saying, what's that content that people will stick with? And then we're going to figure out what that sort of environment has to be for us to monetize it. That's why I think we're so early. It's not about where should I stick that brand inside this event yet.
So you do the music awards that you were talking about. You have a Facebook Live. How many people watched, or how many viewers, or how do you look at it?
More or less like 1 million people.
But you didn't make any money doing it?
We did.
Because you sold the sponsorship?
Yeah, so we did branded content pretty much. Right now our approach to this is branded content, and then also kind of like embed the message of our partners or advertisers within the content. Trying to be organic. These platforms have been made for a very young audience that obviously they push back on advertising. So I think that at these stages it's very risky to start embedding, clear commercial message, because otherwise you are at the risk of losing that audience.
But all of you are using Facebook, and Facebook's making no money off of all of you today. You're making money with your branded content, but all of this massive amounts of viewership is happening for free. Facebook's not charging you, and they're not making any money off of the sponsorships you're selling.
For now.
Do you think that's sustainable?
But they're making money off of ads. I mean, they need.
But not ads on your content.
Right. But they need viewers to be on Facebook and engaging with content. So I think it's monetized just like their typical platform is. I mean, I think that, in fact, actually, the most successful live videos are 18 minutes or longer. So it's like very.
Why do you think that is?
I think people. Well, one thing is that you actually need to have your Facebook Live going for a long time to give people time to land, right? So when you get that push notification for Barstool, the longer that the live stream is going, the more likely people are going to have time to actually cross over and watch it. But I think people start watching and they get sucked in and they get connected to the personalities who are talking. So you do see, time spent. I agree with sort of the metrics around time spent and time watched, and I think that. Facebook Live is and live video in general, pushes those numbers up.
But also, I think the intensity of the content. If you don't deliver good content that is intense enough, what's the purpose of being 18 minutes if you are not telling anything? It's either you go 5 minutes with a lot of intensity, you can go half an hour. The soccer game, it could be a very boring game or a very intense soccer game.
Well, did you see a lot of viewership of what you did last week after the fact, meaning non-live?
On demand, afterwards, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were
more than what you had live?
Not in this case, But again, I'm still, it's how do you go back and promote who were we? We were interviewing Pitbull. What was the interview with Pitbull on the red carpet? It's an entire thing. You create sometimes we forget. These platforms, they allow you to do something, but we had to examine the content. We had to really deliver and say, okay, that audience that is going to be with me live, what are they expecting? if it's a younger audience, to whom I'm going to be interviewing on the red carpet that is appealing to that younger demographic? I might be interviewing somebody that is old and is not appealing to that demo. So it's about content strategy first, and then making sure that you put it on the platform. And sometimes right now we are all in the hype like, oh, Facebook Live, and everybody is putting Facebook Live for whatever thing.
Well, it was like Meerkat and Periscope. When they first launched, everyone was following everyone, and then you realize pretty quickly that most people are pretty bad at creating live video content.
Yeah.
Just like the early days of YouTube, right? There was a lot of bad content. So the early days of Vine, most people are not that creative in 6 seconds.
I'm seeing kind of like going back to the days of digital distribution where you just put in, content from TV and distribute to digital channels. No, this platform has its intricacies, and you have to work with that platform. You have to really create if it's scripted, but you have to create that justification for people to engage. Otherwise, if you are going to do live red carpet coverage as you do in TV and put it in a Facebook Live, it's not going to work because the audience is expecting something different.
Do you think long form, like 18 minutes plus, is the right strategy when you look at it, Peter, Eric? Or is it really cutting it up because your audience is mobile and they want something that's snackable in 30 seconds or less because that's their attention span?
Just the first few minutes are what Allison said. We're trying to wait for people to show up. So there's so many new things to learn that whether it's 3 minutes, 5, 10, you're waiting for that audience to appear before you can even get going. And if you're going to turn on that machine and invest in those resources, you need to get some time out of it. There's a bunch of outside factors that aren't even focused on what am I making for this audience. So we have not learned enough about that yet.
When you think about devices, how much of this is being driven off of mobile or tablet? David, you want to start?
Well,
maybe Allison.
Obviously for digital live video, it sort of has to be on some kind of digital device, right? So of course it's mobile and computer, which is driving it. It's funny, I'm listening to this conversation, of course, as a data and a measurement guy, can't comment too much about the creative or the ad format, but a couple of things which are really important about this is that, one, this is addressing a segment of the population which doesn't watch live TV as much anymore. So it is, to the point that you made around, we're not offering something new yet. There is a gap which is filled by digital live video, which is not filled by other forms of live video, which is that it can attract that younger audience, an audience that doesn't have or doesn't watch as much television anymore. So that's a new audience and a new,
or doesn't have a television,
an important product, to sell to an advertiser. And it's also an audience that might not watch as much, so it's actually incremental audience for advertising. It's also funny because we're talking about many of the same challenges that a TV network would face when trying to address live content. If you put on news or if you put on a sports event, how do you create the content so that people don't tune away, and how do they come back? How do you make sure that they know that it's scheduled at 8 p.m. Eastern instead of at 7 p.m. Eastern, right? I remember I tried to tune into the Olympics and I was like, crap, it's not playing yet. When is this thing starting, right? And that was a challenge which had to you have to resolve. So
I think it's one of the questions the NFL is facing. Are there too many commercials during the NFL right now?
Right. How do you make it so that it's not as interruptive, but at the same time, making the content relevant so you want to come back, right? It's all about trying to come back, and to that end, I actually agree with this point that longer form content is better for monetization, because if something's short and you interrupt it, people just tune away, right? Whereas if you can build an attachment to an experience, people will retain their attention even through a break. People will go away for that minute, even 2 minutes, and actually come back and continue to watch, right? As long as they feel like they're not missing out.
YouTube's rolling live. Kind of announced something at earlier in the year, and I don't sense we've seen all that much. How does YouTube play into what you're thinking about doing live, or does it not at all yet?
We experiment with that actually a couple of weeks ago. We were in Rome. We become the kind of like the partner of the Foundation for the Pope, and there was a game for peace, kind of Maradona playing against Ronaldinho and friends, and we decided to go live on Telemundo.com, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, again experimenting to see what was the traction. We didn't have the audience levels that we expected, but also it was experimental, so we didn't promote. I believe we didn't promote it properly. But for us, we will be like comparing what's YouTube Live versus Facebook Live, what's the traction, and what are the product that you can use in one or the other. It's new.
YouTube Live has been far less successful for us than Facebook Live and Periscope.
And do you have any sense of why?
I don't. I'm not exactly
There's
sure.
obviously
I
a
feel like
huge
there's
audience on
less
YouTube.
promotion, yes, but there's less focus, I think, right now for their company to drive you there. So it's been sort of an afterthought because in the beginning we tried and it really never took off.
And Twitter for live?
Well, we announced a big deal on Twitter. We're all in on Twitter.
What about you, Eric?
We're working with them on something coming up, and we'll see. I think partly these are how people use the platforms or are used to using them. So, Facebook is a certain discovery model that's different from YouTube. So I think those are part of the reasons that something does well or not well live on one versus another, right? You come to YouTube, you intend to sit down for some period of time. You're going to watch content. The length is less important. Facebook's a whole different model. That's why, they're counting a view as 3 seconds.
And Facebook announced earlier in the year that they were going to kind of create kind of this dedicated video experience where there would be kind of a whole world of video and a video tab, and really hasn't broadly rolled it out anywhere in the world other than I think Thailand or something. Do you think it's a good idea to have a dedicated video world, or do you actually think you do better off within the legacy newsfeed and you don't want to be part of a dedicated video world as a content creator? Does it matter to any of you?
I like that button. Yeah, it make it easier for the audience to find us, sure.
What about you?
We are right now, again, the conversation the other day with our folks at the morning show in Telemundo, Nuevo Dia. It's like, how should we do live? It's like, well, in the moment that you are doing live in the afternoon, you are no longer a morning show. So what are you going to offer? How, why, what is it kind of, are you going to give more entertainment news? So then you're jeopardizing other properties that we have through it's, we are trying to come up with an overall strategy on live for all shows, but we have to look first at who do we want to reach. Are we trying to do this to reach audiences that we don't reach through legacy platforms? If so, how do we have to live? How we have to do that? And it goes back to what's our presence in platforms like Snapchat when we are targeting a younger demo. What are they expecting from a brand like us? What is a 13-year-old thinking about Telemundo? Is that they're thinking about is the platform? Is that content that my grandmother used to, or should we present ourselves as okay? We are the #1 entertainment content provider in Spanish, and if so, how we have to create a brand for that new audience. I think that bringing just what we have in TV and try to make it live sometimes makes sense, sometimes it doesn't make sense. There are shows that they will work well. There are shows that why you're going to try this is not going to work.
Alice, when you look at the kind of battle between Facebook and Netflix, is live shifting the balance of power?
And Netflix, you said?
No, sorry, I said between Facebook and YouTube.
Okay, yeah.
Long day.
I think that
Because they're saying they're not really seeing much in terms of YouTube
Right.
Live. I assume you're not seeing much in terms of YouTube Live from a data standpoint today. Has it actually started to move the ship broadly because there's so much live content and so much engagement, as you said, on Facebook? Or is it not meaningful enough to shift?
So I truly believe that each platform is its own special flower. I mean, I think that every platform has an advantage. I think the key in this video age is understanding the data, understanding the ecosystem so that you are creating the right content for the right platform for the right audience. And so if you are creating how-to style videos and uploading them to Facebook, I mean, the community really is on YouTube for that. If you are uploading food videos but only to YouTube, that might be a mistake because there's a huge food community on Facebook. And so it's really important to understand the data and understand these different communities. I think that one thing that's interesting about Facebook is, so there are different behaviors, right? On YouTube, you go looking for content, how to, and gaming content. There's sort of an active searching, Whereas on Facebook, it's much more of a pushing content to you. And someone else on the panel mentioned that. So I think that
Finding
impacts,
content's actually the hardest thing.
That impacts the behavior. I also think that one thing interesting about Facebook is I do think right now video and live on Facebook is kind of a gold rush. Because if you think about the early days of Facebook pages and brands who were paying for likes and building their audience, and that got them a lot of audience, but then that sort of dropped over time as everyone else jumped in. You're seeing that now on Facebook video. So if you're not making Facebook video or Facebook Live and you're a media company, I think that's a mistake because it is a moment to really build your audience and start, and sort of have supersized growth overnight. That said, online video as a pie is growing, so it's not taking away from YouTube. I think YouTube has an amazing space in the ecosystem and will continue, and everybody does, but there are different ways to play different platforms.
We've talked a little bit about Facebook, a little bit about Twitter, and obviously YouTube. The platform we haven't talked at all about is Snapchat, which is, given the demos and the fact that it's mobile first, and we probably either have ourselves, our friends, or our kids that are on it incessantly. Do you think Snapchat's going to play a role in live video? Can they resist this wave?
Well, in a way, it does. It's started really only live. That was the only way you could upload anything. So their legacy and training of people using it was that.
But not in a broadcast fashion.
No, not in a broadcast. So even, but
maybe that distinction is actually not material.
Right,
Like maybe
so-
that's my mistake, actually.
there's one-to-one live video, there's one-to-few, there's one-to-many. Like there's all those different variations.
I mean, you've got a Snapchat Discover channel.
Yeah, and it is awesome. Like Snapchat.
Wait, why do you say that? Why does your whole face just lit
scale,
up?
the scale of it, the
monetization of it, I presume.
Monetization, the scale, but the repeat visit. Like when we talk about building an audience, right? Like Facebook, it's not whether we're building it; it's whether the spigot is turned on or off, right? We have built it. Snapchat is, a growing repeat. They come back every day. Like that is just a freight train.
So should Facebook video tab have a magazine-like experience where they're picking winners? I mean, because obviously Snapchat picked you as a winner. Hopefully they'll pick Peter as a winner soon and get Cheddar as a Discover channel, or if they wanted one. But like, should Facebook be picking winners and defining what we watch, or should they stay algorithm-based the way Google has with YouTube, where whatever you're interested in is what surfaces?
It feels like they need to stay true to the way people use Facebook, less than them dictating how do I set up my tabs to get people to engage. So I feel like Snapchat, whether it was accidental or not, has figured out a way to present content in a way that people like to pick and choose what they're going to consume. And Facebook, I think by adding, say, a pure video environment, that doesn't mean people are going to care about that.
Are you concerned with the Snapchat's change in their position with?
Sure, for all publishers, I think are, but what we are seeing is, we had some runway, to Allison's point, of building an audience that we did in fact build, and they are coming back every day. So
yeah, I don't sense it's actually had a major impact on usage, despite being.
I mean, it's really early. It's only
Right. Well,
10
from a
days
content
or-
creator point, I don't think it matters, but your sales team is probably concerned.
Yeah, well, they're concerned, for
If
a
traffic
few
goes
different
down.
things, right? Well, in the Recode article about, Snapchat really trying to own that
Right.
completely.
Well, do you build a direct business for video monetization? I mean, it's actually the great comment that we probably should get to in the last couple of minutes here is all of you right now are distributing live video over other people's platforms rather than your own. Should you be developing your own destinations for live video where you don't have to worry about somebody saying, well, this is how you monetize, or this is how you don't monetize, or hey, we're replacing you with somebody else? Like how important is having your own destination for live video?
I think there is a codependency between the content and the platform. We have to stay clear on what we do best. We are a content producer. We are the second largest content producer in the world in Spanish language. That's what we do best. And I don't think that we will be good at building platforms. So our job is to continue to develop the platform, to develop the content, to make sure that content talks to this audience, and then pick the platform, because platforms are going to come and go. And again, we did Meerkat, then we did Periscope, and now we do Facebook Live, and we will continue to do whatever it happens 2 years from now. Our job is to work with companies like Snapchat, understand, the platform and how consumers connect with the content in that platform, and trying to co-produce with them content that it will be appealing. But we are a content producer. We are not a tech company.
You feel the same way?
Well, we will soon have just a linear feed on our app and cheddar.com and all of our TV.
And is that what you want to be the
Well,
primary?
no, it won't be the primary, but we want it just to be a uniform experience. When you think of cheddar, you think of a linear feed, and that's it.
You're going to have to measure a lot more, David, soon, and so are you, Allison. More destinations.
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think it's, from a measurement perspective, it's a challenge, but it's a good thing because fragmentation ultimately gives consumers more choice, and then it means that you can make the best choice between which distribution platform you have. And so from a measurement perspective, like, we are just trying to make sure that we cover every single platform. We can provide the metrics so you can see the differing dynamics. I love the idea of the concept that everyone sits on special flower, because you can then see what it does, right? Does having daily repeated return through Snapchat, does that do better than an on-demand flow through Facebook or YouTube, things like that? And that's ultimately what Nielsen and I'm sure Tubular, we're all trying to do with metrics. And
Someone cut down the vine flower.
The more complicated it gets, the better it is for the measurement. Like 4 years ago, when Tubular started, it was really only YouTube as a major video player. I mean, it's pretty wild in the last 4 years. I mean, that we've even seen Meerkat come and go. I mean, like, so many people have.
Now it's called House Party.
Yeah, now it's, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Live, you have the apps, you have OTT, you have HBO Go, you have all this content. Although I heard you say content a lot, and I was reading something the other day that we really should call it storytelling, because content devalues the concept of what people are creating, right? Because I think it is the age of the platform. That's just the reality. That's how people are distributing their stories. And so that does put the balance a little bit out of whack in terms of the platforms having a lot of leverage in terms of monetization. But at the same time, the platforms are very reliant on the content, because that's why people are there, to see amazing stories and to engage with it.
Thank you all. We're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for that awesome panel. Don't go too far. The next session.